Got two great guests in studio as we focus on Shelton, presented by the great folks at Our Community Credit Union. Shelton Fire Marshal and Chief Deputy for Central Mason Fire and EMS Mike Patti, as well as the Shelton Police Chief Darrin Moody, are in studio. Morning, guys.
Good morning.
We are talking 4th of July here. It'll be here before you know it. And we had our fire forum earlier in the week, and fireworks was a topic of conversation.
Yes, sir.
And what, in the city limits, Chief Moody, no fireworks?
None.
So tell us a little bit about the reasonings behind this and the background. It's been a few years now, hasn't it?
It's been a few years. And since I've been here, we've been educating every 4th of July. This year, we're going to partner education with enforcement. Typically, we warn people about the fireworks. I think enough years have gone by to where folks realize that they can't have them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about citing or arresting a 5-year-old with a sparkler walking down the street, but some of the explosives that they sell out at the tribe fireworks stands, they have no place in town, and so people need to be aware of that.
So that is one of the real sticky wickets when it comes to this. And we've talked over the years about how certain portions of the city on one side of the road, or even a road over, all of a sudden you're in the county. And being able to properly enforce some of those rules can make it pretty difficult.
There's several of those around town, some just right here. That one side of the street is city, one side's county. But if you're in the city limits and you're shooting fireworks, there's a chance you're going to get contacted and cited this year.
We talked, Mike, at the forum about the major issues, obviously fire one of them, that can come from this, where people, if they're shooting things up into the air, these projectile types, and they come fluttering down and land in trees or land on roofs or gutters, these are major concerns that people have to protect their homes and things like that.
Exactly. We've had we'll shoot off fireworks in the evening and early morning hours. Excuse me. We'll get a call for a roof on fire. It doesn't have to happen within 15, 20 minutes. It can be several hours into the evening. I've run on calls like that myself over the years.
And those fires burn hot. My wife, Sarah, lost her child at home in the Bay Area in Sonoma County to a fire, and it was just embers getting into the roof, and they're just smoldering in there, getting hotter and hotter, and they didn't even know there was a fire going on until it was too late, and the fire department could only just watch it burn down at that point. There was nothing they could do.
Yeah, it's a defensive fire. Especially we still have houses out there that have the cedar shake roofs, and even with a lot of the dried up fir needles and that we have in the valleys of the roofs and in the gutters. That's where we're going to have our problems. So it's still a hazard, and that's one of the reasons why the city took the steps that it did to ban the fireworks.
So one question that came up at the forum, and then just in general when I'm out and about, somebody wants to go enjoy the 4th at one of the sanctioned large-scale exciting fireworks shows put on by professionals, but they feel like they cannot leave their house because the neighbors up and down the road are not necessarily following the law. And what are some of the ways that you call 911 if they're shooting? And I know there's times of the day when you're allowed to outside the city limits to shoot fireworks off, but if it's after those times, or if you hear your neighbors at any time in the city, what do you call? Who do you call?
The non-emergency number for MACECOM would be the best, unless obviously there's a fire or something like that going on. But if they're shooting off fireworks, typically the dispatch center is going to get overwhelmed on the 4th of July, New Year's Eve, those days anyways. So the best is to just call the non-emergency number. And dispatch will generally just enter that call and put it into the computer system, so the officers as they're driving around can go, okay, here's a call at 123 Main Street of fireworks. I need to go check on it.
Okay. One thing I notice is if I'm out driving in Tumwater, which is another city that has banned it fully, they've got ample signage almost everywhere. It seems like they have a sign on every speed limit sign, almost every street sign. Every so often, are there efforts underway to either through the city and printing press if you have one in the city, which I doubt you do, but if you do, to have those signs up or partner with another graphic company that could present and prepare signs and then put them up for everybody so it's a little more at
I
top
know
of
our
mind.
city manager, Jeff Knighton, worked with me and the other department heads and said, look, we're going to do some enforcement around 4th of July. We need to do something. And we now have, through Public Works, the reader boards.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure you'll see those up around town discussing as we get closer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a great idea to put them up there. You know, Thurston's similar to us because I think I just read in the paper where the county's okaying fireworks in Thurston.
In Thurston County?
Yeah,
I
but the
believe
cities aren't.
Yeah.
The
Right.
county is.
the same situations we have here in Mason County.
And then, too, with our friends in the tribes on both sides of Shelton, for the most part, we've seen over the years where the conditions have been such that they will sell the fireworks to folks, but they don't want them even discharged on their own lands, which is kind of an interesting catch-22, if you will.
I think that was 2 or 3 years ago. And yeah, they're selling. And again, I tell people all the time, the definition of fireworks and then the definition of what's being sold at some of these stands, they're explosives. There's no two ways about it. These are not your sparklers, your snakes, your little tiny fountains. These things are real, legitimate explosives. And, you know, I have a hard time. I love fireworks. I think it's a great thing. I loved them when I was a kid. But to be able to sell something like that and have it set off in town, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I think people use the patriotic angle, and I'm as patriotic as the next person, but they say, what are you talking about? It's America's birthday. I want to shoot these things off if I want to.
Yeah.
It's like my God-given right to, like, set off an explosion.
And like I spoke the other night at the forum, those of us who witnessed what happened at the Forest Festival fireworks parade, we had a real nice public display and set that were done by professionals, and we had one of the professional pyrotechnicians was hurt seriously when an errant firework went off, and that's what happens for professionals. That shows the danger of these fireworks. So you don't have to stretch the imagination very far to see what happens when a layperson tries to use explosives, as the chief pointed out.
Sure. If we are outside of the county, and Chief Patti, speak to this a little bit more. Talk to us a little bit more about the guidelines for that. They go on sale, tomorrow outside
morning,
of the county?
At noon.
And you can shoot them off from 9 to 11.
Every day between now and July 5th.
Okay.
With the exception of the 4th of July, you can shoot them off from 9 a.m. till midnight.
Okay. And when it comes to those off-hour times, again, is that a call to 911? Do we want to engage neighbors or people around us that we hear personally? I mean, that's pretty late at night if you're hearing fireworks after midnight.
Yeah.
Is that something that you should best leave up to the sheriff's department then, or?
I don't know. I think that if you have a good relationship with your neighbor and you want to, ask your neighbor to kind of refrain, that's up to you.
If you have a good relationship with your neighbor, you're hopefully at the
Should be.
party. You can tell them to cut it off. I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
If you didn't get invited, call the sheriff's office, right?
There you go. Good point. Make a non-emergency.
Okay.
The non-emergency number and have them, have the law enforcement professionals take care of it.
And a bucket full of water, douse them, keep them in there, kind of like you're doing with a campfire.
Right. Don't. If you've got a dud that didn't go off, don't walk over and put your face into it to find out what happened. Let it sit for a while and then douse it in water.
Sure.
Make sure it's dead out.
When these laws, I know in California, some went to a vote where the people voted to ban them or not. Others were done by like the city councils and the government bodies and stuff. How do these work, and how permanent are they? In other words, let's say the drought in the next few years goes away and we have wetter, springs again and stuff leading into summer. Is there a likelihood these bans would be lifted, or once they're in place, is this like a lifetime ban in Shelton? Or I know Belfair has stands going up right now, so at Belfair it's still legal. But do you think more and more communities are going to ban them in the coming years, or do you think some cities that ban them now, is there any chance they would not ban them?
Well, Belfair is part of the unincorporated area of Mason County, so it would take action by the Mason County Commission to ban fireworks in Belfair or outside the city of Shelton. Anytime that for example, if the Mason County Commission took action today to ban fireworks, it's going to take 1 year before that ordinance could take place. And I'm going to make the assumption, and Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they can, by vote, they can undo any ordinance they put into place. So if they decide 2 years from now that they don't want to have a fireworks ban in place, although I don't know of any place that's
Gone back on.
I've not heard of any reversals per se, and we witnessed pretty heavy fire issues throughout California, Oregon, and Washington the last couple of years. I really don't see a group that would want to make that worse and do it again. The other thing about it is you do have groups out there that say, well, this was a fundraiser. A lot of the nonprofits and stuff and baseball clubs,
they raise a lot of money.
It was their fundraiser, and I get it. It was a good fundraiser for you, but
You could sell other things.
there's other ways to go about it. It's not up to me. It wouldn't have my support if they said, let's go back and not ban the fireworks again and open it up. It just raises a whole host of issues.
Even if you're just looking at the forecast models that we've talked about, I mean, there's no real end in this inside over the next 20 years.
Correct.
So by that time, that's a whole generation that grew up without them, possibly.
The whole sad thing, too, is it's kind of the bad apples that ruin it forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Safe and sane. Like my father, I grew up in San Francisco, which is like a concrete jungle, not a lot of grain to catch on fire, but we always did it by the book. The safe and sane fireworks stands. We had a bucket of water and a hose, and those aren't the people creating the problems. It's the ones who are shooting it off in the forest and burning half the town down that ruin it for everybody.
Yep.
Like you said, when we were kids, most of it was safe and sane. And living in the Bay Area as well, used to drive into San Francisco into Chinatown to get the firecrackers. That was where they sold those. But even the safe and sane, I remember as a kid when people would buy them and we'd buy them, and you tried to modify those to, it was like, okay. That's what you did as a kid.
The little cherry ones that would spin.
That's it.
Yep.
And, I remember a fire starting in our neighborhood with a smoke pot, just the thing that smoked, because wouldn't it be cool to throw this? And so,
Sure.
like you said, you open that door, and then the next one, and then the next one,
And each year, too, the fireworks get more and more extreme, what last year's model would not work this year. It has to have
new and improved.
3 more mortars or 8 more explosions.
Daddy, are we going to set off the world ender now?
Yeah,
Is that the grand finale?
they've got ones named like that. too.
Exactly.
The obliterator.
So again, in the city limits, the fireworks are not legal, and more enforcement will be out on the 4th. In addition to the great folks in the Shelton Police Department doing their jobs to make sure everybody is safe in a fashion with their barbecues and things like that, and just general 4th of July stuff with more folks in town. In the county, starting tomorrow at noon, it will be open, and then from 9 to 11 are the hours of discharge, except for on the 4th, which is midnight. So keep that in mind, but be cognizant of your neighbors. The other thing we talked about today, we're kind of running out of time for the show, but it's PTSD Awareness Day today.
I heard that this morning.
One of the things we were talking about is how these can sometimes be triggers for our military veterans. They hear these explosions in the air, and
that's it. But a lot of this is just being considerate.
Yeah.
And we're going to have dogs get out.
Yep, exactly. Animals,
dogs,
pets.
And we'll tell the people that are calling us on the 4th of July regarding fireworks or before, have some patience. Understand that the officers out there are going to be busy all night long.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you call at 8 and we're not there at 8:05, don't panic. We've got your call, and we will do the best we can to get there. But they're going to be saturated with calls. I'll be out with them. So
Yeah. Chief Moody, Chief Patti, good to see you guys.
Thanks for calling us.